Doctors treat night terrors as a simple chemical imbalance in the brain, but Deden's visions did not respond to medication. Every night, safely locked in his modern apartment, he woke up to a motionless figure wrapped entirely in a white burial cloth, standing outside his rain-slicked window. The antipsychotics his psychiatrist prescribed had zero effect. He took his pills perfectly, but instead of fading away, the terrifying hallucinations grew sharper and more persistent with every dose. The terror soon breached his walls. He began waking up to violent, heavy thuds echoing directly above his bed. It sounded like someone was repeatedly jumping on his roof. Surrounded by the bright lights and endless traffic of the city, Deden felt completely insulated. He lived hundreds of miles away from his remote village. With the medication failing and the thumping growing louder, his apartment offered no sanctuary. His girlfriend Lily suggested the one path he had spent 15 years avoiding, returning to the village of Dusun to face his past directly. Deden had been absent from his childhood home for over a decade, having fled the village immediately following the sudden and tragic death of his father. The bus ride back stripped away the safety of the concrete jungle. The paved roads gave way to rough dirt, and the dense trees swallowed the horizon as the ambient light dissolved into a heavy darkness. Staring out the window into the pitch-black tree line, he spotted the same impossible figure. A solitary shape wrapped in a white burial shroud stood perfectly still among the trunks, watching the bus pass. Crossing the village limits marked a psychological threshold. Deden had re-entered a territory where the past manifested as a physical presence, waiting for his arrival. Dusun was a tiny cluster of traditional thatched roof houses, holding on to a fraction of its former population. In a settlement this small, there was nowhere to hide from a secret. Walking past the cemetery at the edge of the settlement, Deden saw the shadows among the headstones were occupied. Multiple shrouded figures stood motionless between the graves, their glowing eyes fixed on him as he approached his old house. He found his Uncle Dalai curled in a corner, rocking back and forth. The old man was obsessively muttering about a dead man in a white cloth who had returned to destroy him. Uncle Dalai was recounting the same entity that had haunted Deden's city apartment. The affliction was a shared family inheritance, anchored to their bloodline and the very soil of the village. That night, the entity crossed the physical threshold of the home. The temperature in the room plummeted as the pale, bound corpse stepped directly out of the shadows. Uncle Dalai rushed into the room, gripping a shotgun, screaming that the creature had ruined their lives. He blamed the entity for the misery that had plagued his mind for 20 years. Dalai fired wildly and chased the retreating figure out the front door, plunging deep into the black foliage of the jungle path. A single blood-curdling scream echoed out of the trees, followed by absolute silence. The haunting had finally escalated into physical death. In Indonesian tradition, a soul becomes trapped if its burial shroud is not properly loosened. Bound tightly at the head and feet, the spirit is forced to hop through the world as a restless physical manifestation, known as a pocong. Weeping in the aftermath of the attack, Deden's aunt finally revealed the identity of the creature. The pocong was Deden's own father. 20 years ago, Dalai was drunk while logging in the forest. He lost control of a massive trunk, causing it to snap and crush his brother to death. To avoid a murder charge, Dalai buried the body in secret. In his rush to hide the evidence, Dalai shoved the corpse into a shallow grave without untying the ritual knots. This violation of sacred burial tradition locked his brother's soul into a cycle of torment. The Pocong's pursuit was a calculated pressure campaign. It used terror to drive Deden back to the village, ensuring the truth of the murder would finally be acknowledged. The following morning, Deden brought a religious scholar to the house. The scholar performed the proper prayers and blessed the grounds, fulfilling the rites that had been denied decades earlier. From that night onward, the heavy footsteps on the roof stopped. The white figure never appeared outside the window again. The debt was finally settled. Traditional burial rites act as a final accountability for the living. They demand that the truth be honored before the body is lowered, preventing hidden sins from clawing their way back to the